Hey everybody, welcome back to Ready Steady Play, where it's me and Ollie.
Yep, we have just finished playing an awesome and epically epic,
brutal Battle of Creasy on Joan of Arc.
Yes, historically accurate too.
Yeah, it turned out to be fairly historically accurate.
Yeah, heavy losses on the French side, an English victory. Terrible dice rolling because occasionally God does not smile on you.
I feel like if we were to just assess the dice skew of that game, it definitely came up in my favour.
Oh yeah.
But to be fair, that's because of all the that's an incredible roll. Whatever you're doing, attacking or defending, that's really good.
God damn it.
It's because the game's over. So if you haven't checked out our
God damn it!
So if you haven't checked out our gameplay series, please go and check that out. But if you're here for... This is going to be our... I think I said final thoughts, but that's...
Well, first impressions.
Yeah, this is definitely first impressions. And the distinction is usually final thoughts comes when we feel like we've done enough to sort of talk about a game, at least with some sense of finality. Although usually what I mean by it is it's just the end of the series. Yeah. These are our final thoughts at the end of a series.
But in this case, we definitely too big for us to have done it in one series.
I mean, we've barely touched on the contents in the box. This is just the core set, so we've got like 4 boxes we haven't even looked at.
Not to
half the game hasn't even turned up.
4 entire army sets we've never played.
Yeah. But I think that we are quite familiar with the sort of the rule set and the basic mechanics, so we can give this a pretty solid rundown. Give it 5 French cavalry charges.
I believe I made more than 5. I made at least 5 in the last couple of turns.
No, that's my rating. 5 French cavalry charges.
Out of?
That's the system. 5 French cavalry
I give it 5 peasant squads that did not move. Because that was just...
Because they were there, not moving.
Yeah, they basically did not need to be on the field. I took one look at that card and went, no.
The thing is, so this is a war game. It's a miniatures game. It's also a board game. It's kind of a sort of a hybrid of the two, really. And obviously you've got a board set up with all the miniatures on it, but it does feel a lot more like a miniatures game than a standard board game.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing for this is every mission you build this board based off of what the scenario book tells you.
Yeah.
So each time you're making this hex board, populating it with bits. We've got the Kickstarter bits, which was the really, really cool resin buildings, which we love.
Yep.
And it makes me think, scale-wise, it's a skirmish game, but it's indicative of a bigger army game. So the amount of movement you've got and content you've got is clearly more than a skirmish game. Like
it sort of fills this strange niche because it feels like a really classical war game, and I'm talking about like the sort of the old Napoleonic stuff or like the Flames of War type stuff.
Risk.
Risk. Come on now. Risk isn't a war game. Risk is
a way to divide a family.
Yeah, Risk is an Ameritrash dudes on a map game.
No, but this is.
But what it does is it takes that sort of traditional thing and injects it with a healthy dose of sort of like Ameritrash. Like there's loads of decks of cards. Yeah. There's loads of dice that you're rolling. You're creating pools of dice and just throwing stuff. All of which I like.
Yeah, I have to admit, the game itself I really, really enjoy. There's so much going on. Like the fact we've got NPC characters that we can talk to and co-opt for a while is something that's very weird and unexpected. The fact you can talk to them as a free action... Goddamn blacksmith.
Yeah, goddamn blacksmith.
It added something funny to it, because for a while it felt like we were playing 2 different games.
But the thing is as well, I suppose, and this is something we didn't consider because we haven't really explored that mechanic much, is that there's actually a downside. Like the discussion can actually have a negative consequence for you as well.
Yeah, it just didn't really come up.
Well, because we didn't know until we started doing it that there was that possibility. Yeah. It did come up, I think, once down here where the priest was like, "You're not holy enough," and pushed you out of the space.
The King of France, you get.
But I really do like the execution of the combat and the defensive stuff. It is one of those games where there's all the sort of core fundamental system of moving around and attacking is very, very simple. But then they hang a lot of exceptions and additional elements on it with all the rules on these cards here, all the scenario rules as well.
Yeah.
You've got the cards you can play from your hands as well. So there's a lot more going on. And
the intrigue. Which we didn't do.
We didn't get to use... Well, I didn't even get any intrigue coins in this mission.
Well, I did, and it didn't really help.
You got them from praying, right?
No, I got them from a card.
Oh, see, I can't even pray. I know that the council cards sometimes have them on. But we didn't have any of those particular ones.
We didn't really have enough turns to have a large section of the deck come out.
There aren't even any there.
No.
So I don't think you can get them from the council cards, actually. I think you have to get them from praying and from maybe even discussion with the others.
I got it from a legendary card, if I remember correctly.
But I like the card play. I like the back and forth. I like the action.
Yeah, I like this mini board.
Yeah,
I do like that. It's funny because at the first time you look at it, you think, "What is this for?" And you very rarely think that you're going to be able to save an action for later because you burn through them very quickly. But you can store up to 3 of each kind, and it does have tactical consideration. You go, I don't want to charge this turn. I mean, in our game, nothing was going to stop me.
I never don't want to charge.
I have cavalry. They have charge. Put it together yourself. But interrupts and the repeat actions, they can be good to save.
So the way it kind of works is you've got these grey basic actions and you throw them down in an area, which is sometimes one big area like this, or these little areas on the hexes. Yep. And when you do that, you can activate all of the units in the area, and they can do one thing, which could be move, or it could be attack. And you can, for example, move one unit and attack with the other unit if you want. But if both units attack, then you must pick one target area for them to attack into. And that's the grey ones. And then the green ones allow you to do an attack plus some movement, depending on whether you're mounted or not. So they give you a bit more flexibility.
Well, you always get to move at least one, then attack, but cavalry units can move too, so they cover a lot of distance. Yeah,
cavalry units can cover a lot of distance and even get round people's flanks as well that way.
Well, as long as they're allowed to go onto the pavement.
And then we've got these brown reactivation ones here, which can be put down in a space. So once an action's in a area, that area cannot contain another action token unless it's one of these brown ones here, which can go down. So you can shoot twice with an archer group, for example.
Or move twice, or activate a load of your heroes for shenanigans.
Exactly. And then these blue ones can be used after your opponent resolves an order. These are called orders, actually. And then you can take that on someone else's turn. And I like how sort of simple this system is to implement, but how much sort of thinking you have to do, actually, because if you're careless, you can wind up in a situation which is not ideal.
Yeah, as well as the fact that the 3 coloured ones can also be used as a grey one. So if you're in a position where there's nothing it can do, but you have to do an action, you can still spend them. You're not locked into it.
Yeah, exactly. You're never locked into. They're never useless.
Yeah.
But there is going to come a point as well, and I quite like the way there's this sort of ebb and flow, because these actions and the way you can save them up actually integrates quite nicely with this death system up here, because you've got these 2 sort of kill signs. You've got the sword, which is murder, 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 and you've got the bandaged face, which is called disrupt. And whether you murder something or disrupt them, they come off the board, but the disrupted ones are sent to this sort of like fate area here. Exactly, the infirmary. But the murdered ones are sent to the top of the board here, where they're out of the game for the rest of the game.
Yep.
But the disrupted ones, they'll get a chance at the end of... once both players have had a turn, there'll be a sort of a fate turn where you roll this die, and they may or may not be permanently dead or come back. And what that means is that, you'll get a big battle happening where a bunch of units from both sides are sent over to the infirmary, and then while you're waiting for these units to sort of come back or be dead, you can sort of reserve actions and stock up and reposition and stuff. So there's this sort of like ebb and flow of big battles and then building up to another big conflict and then resolving that. And it can take place relatively swiftly as well, even over just a few turns.
Yeah, it's funny as well because there's a lot of ways to modify attack and defense dice. You can use these legendary cards, you can use these barricades that certain units can put down, you can have terrain giving you modifiers, as well as character buffs. So, for example, my level 2 commander gave all troops in the same area charge, or he gave them dodge. And that's an important consideration because that can be the difference between overwhelming victory or horrific losses.
Yeah, and you've got these commanders, which actually are really cool too, because when they activate, as a bonus command, they can activate a bunch of troops.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Most of them.
So you've got... That guy is so bad.
This guy
is bloody terrible.
This guy, it makes me want to invent a time machine so I can go back and punch him.
Just not use him. Never activate him.
It's like, oh, he's got a great attack. His defense is terrible. But then that ability...
Yeah, so you roll a die, and if you roll a murder sword, then your opponent just decides to do something else with him.
It's like, oh, I've got a charge down on this. It's like, okay, well, you're charging the wrong way.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you're an idiot.
You're an idiot. But also, he doesn't have a command as well, so I guess maybe historically he was a traitor or a coward or something.
Not sure.
But the white is a range, and then the black is a number of units, so... Edward III, obviously a king or something, can order a bunch of people around.
A king or something. He was the king of England.
Cool. And so...
king or something.
Or something. Well, it doesn't say King Edward III.
That's because it's implied. He's got a number after his name. They're the only people that keep track.
Are they? Oh, cool.
Most of them...
I thought maybe he was the third one because the first two failed.
I mean, that's also true. They died. There's no greater failure.
Well, everybody dies, don't they?
Exactly.
I mean, they might have died prematurely or in disgrace. But what that means is you can sort of pick other hexes and activate units in those hexes to do things. So leaders sort of give you more options and to do more things, which is really cool. And that gives you this really sort of, this real breadth of scope to sort of develop sort of tactics and think about the order in which you want to do things as well. You know, before you start resolving things so that you can kind of change your mind about stuff. Yeah,
it's quite funny as well because there are rules about how you can and can't daisy chain things, specifically to stop you from just having, here's 40 minutes of my turn, that's just carrying on and on and on and on and on. Mm-hmm. But there are also very specific exceptions that allow you to do just that.
So, well, I do think that
but like that you can't order the same unit twice.
Yes,
that is a fixed rule. You cannot get around that.
Yeah,
but you also cannot order a commander unless they're also a mercenary.
So we sort of thought, and I think this is a way to simplify it. And there may be a nuance to this that I've missed and I'm wrong. But if you put down an order somewhere, and then you have a commander, and that commander moves a unit, that unit or whatever cannot then be activated again until another order is placed.
Yeah, because it would be they have moved, they have one action because they're a basic unit.
Yeah. But what you can't do is say activate this space, take all of these leaders, and then just fire these archers over and over again.
Yeah.
Because the archers...
Shenanigans.
Because there's only one order is out, so they can only do one thing, no matter how many opportunities you could generate for them.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good restriction. It sort of keeps it. But what it also sort of allows you to do is it gives you these sort of complex tactical thought processes. Because you're creating die pools and defending with die pools, what you want is big attacks, right? The more attack dice you throw,
specifically,
the better your attacks will be.
Specifically, you want as many of these as possible.
The red ones are the best attacks. The black ones are the best defense. But what I mean is that, you know, if for example I trigger off this space and these three guys have a command, then you know what I can do is trigger off 3 different groups of archers, which kind of incentivizes me to spread my archers out.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I'll do a lot more damage if I keep them all in one area and activate that one area in its entirety. Yeah. And so you get these kind of interesting tactical sort of decisions to make.
It is funny and something that I like, that it's not just hoard up and that is the best option. Mm-hmm. There is other considerations, and I like that nuance in this game because I've played games before where it's essentially, here's my bucket of dice from one unit.
Yeah.
You're dead. Because that's how I'm throwing that many dice at you. There is no way around it. There's a bit of that in this. Mm-hmm. And nicely it's in range and in combat, because there was that one point where I had a horde of melee and it was just like, I cannot defend against this, was your line, I believe. And it happened.
But that's one of the things I think they've done quite well. Because the French cavalry charge is 2 red dice per cavalry.
Yeah.
And then they get a bit extra if they're going over the plains. And
they get even more if they get to be veterans with that poxy card.
It's horrifying. It's really, really scary. But I think their attack is like the most. I mean, the Foot Knights actually have a pretty good attack too, because they've got 2 reds. But
the same attack.
The same attack, but they don't have the mobility of the French knights. And so the French Knights can kind of just come out of nowhere. But anyway, the point is that, I think they've done a pretty good job of sort of balancing the defense and the attack so that it feels, if you've got a combat sort of in your favor, it largely feels like it's kind of worked out.
Yeah.
But also it feels like the units like the cavalry charge that should be scary are scary.
Yeah.
And that's really important, I think,
It's funny as well because the different, you've got some units that are the same. Like we both had pikemen in this engagement. We both had sergeants at arms. And in this particular one, the two sets of cards were identical. But you also get things like English archers, which you had.
Well, I've got they're just called bowmen, actually.
All right, so you've got bowmen, but there are also faction-specific cards that come out that are...
Well, an example is, the Genie's crossbowmen, right? So here we've got the Genie's crossbowmen. There is another card that looks exactly the same, just called crossbowmen. So they're not the French ones, and they might be slightly different in terms of the rules they've got and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's the thing, that there are some variations which can mean you've got effectively the same unit, but they do different things. I think the Foot Knights are a good one because there's one version where they have two-handed weapons, so their defense is worse, but their attack is better.
Yeah. And so there's three different variations.
Yeah, and they have different rules, which I like because it means, although it's the same unit, they are going to work differently. But the scale of the amount of models we've got is just intimidating.
Yeah, it is intimidating. And I think that's actually my biggest complaint about the game is... In order to,
setup time.
Yeah, well, in order to accommodate this level of scope, they've got a lot of models. They've got a lot of pieces and cards and stuff. And for a game that is sort of feels light and kind of, it's not light exactly, but it's not like you're not referencing endless rule books. You don't have to check tables.
You don't see me with 6 codexes and an FAQ.
Yeah, it's not a GMT game. It's not a Games Workshop game. It's somewhere in the middle. But it's a lot lighter than either of those things. And I really like that. And for a game that feels kind of dice chucky and sort of actiony almost, it takes a long time to set up. And finding all of the cards and stuff can be quite an administrative task.
Yeah, we were talking about when we were setting this board up. There were sections of cards where you need to find this thing, where's the priest gone? So this priest model... depending on the scenario, he's either a neutral character or he is a member of the Army of Light. He might be the Pope.
Yeah.
There are a lot of models that are pulling double duty, which is great for game variants, but it does mean that finding them is very tricky because the artwork gets repeated. And, for example, my two heroes had the exact same card and the exact same artwork, so I chose different models to represent. So I had
those two were the same model, weren't they? They were just
they're the same colors on different bases.
Yeah, I don't know what the other guy died.
Yeah, he died a while back. But
there we go. But it took us a while to find that model as well, and that's
it's because it's difficult to identify them because my big thing would have been having a name on the bottom would have been good, or a reference number, because it's.
Yeah, having reference numbers on the bases and the cards would have been really helpful. Also, we never actually did find this model, so we just used this guy instead. But this guy has a shield and a lance. He looks a lot more like this model than the other two do. But we only had two of these guys.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, we've just obviously not found it, but
well, that's the point where we're like, we need to start shooting.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is because there's so much going on. It's quite difficult to set that up initially, and part of that's going to be going forward storing it for us.
Yeah,
we'll go, right, this is this bag of characters, they primarily belong to this army, look through there. And you need to come up with some clever storage solutions. Yeah. But I mean, it's on you as the player to try and find them. It would have been nice if there was a document they've put online that just says this is what each model looks like and these are the various names, and it just shows you a 3D rotation of what the unit is. That would be helpful for them. Yeah, something like that, really. Because they do what they do is they have a really good list of, I say really good, they have adequate list of the components at the start of the rulebook from the core set. Yeah. But then all of the other Kickstarter stuff doesn't really have good informative diagramming. And because there's so much to do, and you're really just excited to get playing. You don't want to be sitting around gluing everything to bases, putting everything together, trying to find stuff. And we've got like these 3 variations of peasants, and I find myself wondering, should I put
consistent models on each base, or should each base be a variance?
I believe your anal retentiveness kicked in before that became a real question.
Well, no, I honestly didn't really think about it until I noticed the art on the peasant card, which is over there. I thought there were actually 3 different types of units, but you can see here each of these guys. Maybe you can't because this, but you can see each of these models on these bases is represented on this card, and when it refers to peasants in sort of diagrams, it actually shows typically these ones here with the clubs and the daggers, but.
It's funny, I always thought it was the pitchfork, but...
Yeah, and the pitchfork model is also a farmer, but now that they're all on bases, I have to have like an army of farmers? I don't know. So there was a level of sort of interpretation to setting it up that was a bit of a chore.
I mean,
and there's still work to be done to make it more efficient to set up as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things as well, we've got a lot of models on no base, because we just didn't seem to have enough. I think that might be because there's more coming in the second part of the game.
The second wave, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where some of the other bases are. But we tried to make do, so if there was something we both had, we'd label them out. So my pikemen versus Mike's pikemen. I think that was the only cross... Oh no, the Sergeant at Arms as well.
Yeah, the Sergeant at Arms as well, yeah. That was
I think. I had a different model to Mike.
Yeah, so what we did was we actually tried to use the different... Because the pikemen, again, had these sort of variable models.
Yeah.
And so we just gave all of these ones and put them on blue bases, and I had these ones on red bases. But there wasn't enough base rings for our entire armies. And, I mean, albeit most of that concern was about filming. Like, we were worried that this would just look like a sea of grey plastic. And it wouldn't really be resolved by painting either. I mean, it would be helped.
But the thing is this is a series. This is a section of knights, a unit of knights. Even they're French in this game. They could be Papal Legion in another.
We haven't seen them used by the English army, for example, but they could be.
No, but
the knight card and a lot of these unit cards are factionless.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're used in the Holy Army as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the Holy Army is just like all humans, though.
True, but it would be slightly different.
At that point, you're playing against demons and Satan and all kinds of nonsense.
Yeah, guess what we're doing soon?
Wolves. Yeah, we'll have to do that soon. We've got this giant Satan model who's very cool. So we want to check that out. There's rules that you won't have seen in this game for giant beasts that are very exciting.
They have their own dice.
They have their own giant dice.
I don't know what I did, but it looked cool.
Stomp, stomp, murder everything.
Yep. And they've got some special rules in the rulebook that look really cool.
And we have had sort of a bit of a tinker around with that, and it does seem very cool. So,
but I mean,
we're excited to get stuck into that.
Aside from that, like those are fairly minor complaints compared to what we could have with a bad game.
I mean, pretty much
this is a lot of fun.
My complaints about this game are about logistics.
Yeah, setup.
Like the actual gameplay, once we're set up. I mean, I guess the one thing I have as well as building the dice pools is prone to human error.
Yeah,
I think we did a lot of sort of double checking and things like that. But and what I was going to say though, following on from the big monsters thing, is the big monsters move around on entire hexes.
Yeah,
and what I do really like about this game as well is they've used the scale of the models and the monsters and everything really, really well. Yeah. And it gets this real sort of sense of escalation. I'm sure you guys have seen the Legendary Dragon, which we don't actually have out here because we're terrible at this. But it's huge, and it looks really great next to all of these little models. It looks super cool.
Damn you. That's the
dragon roar.
Come on.
Look, that's it. All that's in that box is it's another box. I should use this in Wingspan. But there you go. So you can see its base takes up an entire hex.
I have to admit, the thing I really like about this as well, all of the units are roughly in scale. Like that human, the farmer is about the right size for the guy on horseback. The horse has a sort of in scale height. And then you see the dragon.
And I guess that's what a dragon would be
dink,
like.
Dink. 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 I'll get you in the eye.
Oh, dink. Dink, 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 dink.
All of my dice rolling.
I feel like that's Futurama.
It barely fits on the table.
We can't even get it on camera effectively.
But I want to play with
that
this.
Guy's fucked.
That guy.
And yeah, that's the thing. I mean, ultimately, this is basically a giant, enormous box of toys that presents you with a lot of really fun ways to play with the toys, and it's just enormously enjoyable.
Yeah.
Once you get it set up, it's just great fun, and it's not the most cognitive war game, but that's fine because it's just so much fun.
Yeah, it's as well. When we started playing it, kind of looked like it was going to be an early wipe, but it did not happen. It has... You can have a lot of momentum in different phases, and you can build up a lot of momentum, but it came down to the wire again.
Yeah, there was some good swings in this game. And I have seen games that have been more one-sided, but I think that's largely due to poor choices. I think if you play reasonably well, and you're mindful of sort of your dice pools and the probabilities, then
failing that, balls out lucky,
then the game can be quite, can swing back and forth between the victory conditions, and you can lose a lot of guys or send them to the fate area, but because there's different victory conditions, that's not always a problem.
Yeah, and you can always get them, like, as long as they're in the infirmary, there's a 2 in 6, so a 1 in 3 chance they'll come back.
And that allows you to sort of rebuild for sort of a second attempt. So, if your first attempt, you sort of achieved 50% of what you wanted, because you got unlucky or for whatever reason, maybe your opponent played a good card, then that's okay, because that's still 50% progress, and then you might rally and come back again. And that kind of tension and drama is really exciting. And that's what makes it, like, fun, like sort of just joyful fun. Yeah. It's not like chess, where it's sort of like cognitive, engaging tension. No, anyway,
this was a really fun game. Yeah. And I would like to play this again, intend to play it again, and there's so much content to play with, it's actually kind of scary.
I think unless you guys really don't want to see more Joan of Arc, we'll probably be getting this to the table again on the channel, because there's so much to explore. There's a siege castle mechanic thing coming, an Ottoman army coming.
I mean, we said at the
loads
opening,
more villages.
We said in the opening episode, there's even some that they're nothing like this, because you're an inquisitor hunting a werewolf. That game is going to be entirely different to this one.
Yeah, I'd really like to try the sort of investigative werewolf one as well, and sort of see what that's like.
I love that that's all part of the same game, because I was a bit worried when we cracked the box open that would mean they're putting so much into it that they've not done it well in any area. Mm. There are some games where you can just tell, and then they had to put this bit in, and it was half-assed.
Yeah, or they didn't have time to develop it properly because of a Kickstarter obligation.
Yeah. The talking in this actually adds quite a good element. The scenarios talking about who you can engage with looks really cool. Don't break the dragon.
And I was just going to say that I think the game is definitely... I think at its heart, it's definitely a 2-player game. But there are some scenarios that open up, particularly the one I'm thinking of, because there's some team scenarios where it's 2v2, which, for my mind, is basically 1v1. But...
I'll let Michael know.
No, what I mean is, like, it's... Because you could play any 2-player scenario with teams of 2, couldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, in something like this, they might have less to do.
Yeah.
But I didn't see anything in the 4-player scenarios that made me think, okay, we need 4 players for this.
True, but there were definitely some of the 3-player scenarios that...
Well, that's what I was getting to, but the 3-player scenario is very different, because there's this Wrath of the Trask scenario, or whatever. I can't remember what it's called. But the Trask, which is a monster, and one player sort of controlling the bestial forces, while the other 2 are controlling the royal, the French and the English. And that's interesting, because... It's a 3-way free-for-all, I think, or something, and that's cool. I'd really like to try that as well. So there are some 3-player applications too. It's not completely devoid of that, which is nice. But I think for now we'll have to be signing off of our first impressions of Joan of Arc. I don't know where to buy it or what the situation is with buying it. I assume that it will be coming back to Kickstarter or available at retail at some point, so there will be a chance to get it.
But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to playing it more. So
if there's something specific, I mean, because we're quite keen to check out the Satan scenario from the Unleash Hell box. But if you guys
the Devil in
Avignon, but if you guys are keen to see something specific, leave a comment down below, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah,
we've got everything basically. So
most of everything. It's going to take...
everything in Wave 1, but Wave 2 is coming at some point soon.
Yeah, it's more going to be about our ability to find the things in the boxes than limitations on what we can show at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to need a system.
Yes.
Cool.
But yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for sticking with us.
Thanks for watching and coming on this adventure with us, everyone. Bye for now.
See you next time.
Bye.
Oh no!
Oh no, I've maimed the dragon.
No, you maimed the guys below the dragon. The dragon is fine.
Yeah, I've maimed everything else.